The crisis in China's real estate sector continues to grow, with a top developer, Country Garden, halting trading of its domestically offered bonds after admitting it had missed a key debt repayment deadline. Shares of the company's stocks fell more than 18% on Monday. That's after the announcement, and the news sent shockwaves around the Asian exchanges this morning, with property development firms taking the biggest beatings. Country Garden had been the sector's largest player by sales, but now it joins the ranks of other developers drowning in debt, like Evergrande. The company still has a grace period until September 6 to come up with a cash for creditors, and released a statement saying it's confident the Chinese property sector will rebound. But that comeback cannot come fast enough for Beijing, which has relied on real estate for nearly 3 decades as an engine of economic growth. Let's get to more on this now with Rajiv Biswas in Singapore. He's Executive Director in Asia Pacific, a Chief Economist at S&P Global Market Intelligence. Thank you very much for joining us today. So China has been very reluctant, we were saying, to bail out property developers. Do you think this will change down the line, or are we going to see different types of stimulus take place, but no direct bailout?
I think the Chinese government over the last 2 years has been very cautious in terms of the way it's been dealing with the private sector property developers, because it wanted to introduce greater regulatory controls to reduce leverage and create more responsible borrowing by the developers. But unfortunately, that process has in itself triggered some deep-seated problems because it has exposed vulnerabilities in many property developers. That process of greater leverage being exposed began about 2 years ago. And so since then, China's property sector has been in quite a deep slump in terms of a new home building. And there's now a crisis of confidence amongst households in terms of being willing to pay money to build a new home with private developers, because they fear that the developers might go bankrupt. And of course, the latest situation with Country Garden, which is very famous and was regarded as one of the top private sector developers, is now also undermining confidence even further amongst households in terms of being willing to put deposits to build new homes.
Right. And I wonder, will there be ramifications for the broader economy in China, its GDP, but also equity prices, commodity prices?
There's a real, I think, concern about China's recovery momentum this year. It's been underperforming expectations in terms of the speed of recovery. And I think the latest situation regarding Country Garden puts further question marks over whether the housing sector will be able to generate momentum to add to growth. Expectations had been that the housing sector might start to pick up through the course of this year and into next year, which would support economic growth. But given latest developments, that may undermine confidence and could be yet another challenge to the outlook for China's economy. China's already facing a lot of headwinds from declining exports, relatively weak industrial production. And so if construction doesn't pick up, that is quite a major setback in terms of recovery momentum.
Right, and those imports were down too for China. Rajiv Biswas, thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you.
And now let's go to other top business stories from around the world. The Russian ruble has fallen to a 16-month low against the US dollar, depreciating well past 99 to the dollar over the weekend. The decline was surged by an increase in Russian military spending and a collapse in export revenues. Russia's currency has lost nearly 25% of its value this year, as Western sanctions and capital outflows put downward pressure on the ruble. Tesla has once again cut prices in China as it looks to boost demand in the world's biggest car market. The EV maker slashed the price of the top-end long-range and performance versions of the Model Y sport utility vehicle by nearly $2,000. The decision has sent shares in car makers tumbling amid concerns that it will reignite a pricing battle that had started to show signs of easing. And Warner Bros. Hit Barbie has continued to dominate North American box offices. The movie has now crossed the $500 million domestic earnings mark this weekend by adding another $33.7 million from domestic theaters. Starring Margot Robbie as the iconic doll, Barbie has raked in a whopping $1.2 billion worldwide since its debut 4 weeks ago.